Greetings, people. Greetings. We're out here for another bike upgrade, maintenance, repair sort of thing. This one's more of a repair. Today, we're dealing with an issue that got brought up with my last upgrade with these sprockets. As you can see right here, when I was torquing down these nuts on these studs for the wheel hub assembly, just torquing it down to the recommended 24 foot-pounds snapped this stud clean off. And not only that, there were a number of others, like I think there were 2 or 3 more that felt like they were twisting, like I couldn't torque them down to 24 foot-pounds. It just kept twisting, and if I went any more, those would snap off too. So I was looking online and saw that like a couple other people, like pretty quickly in the search engine, a couple of the people had the same problem where you just torque it down to the recommended 24 foot-pounds and the studs just snap off. They're really cheap apparently. So I went out and I got some bolts that are the same size as those studs, and today I'm going to be taking off my wheel and I'm going to be removing those studs and putting in bolts instead. So from now on, every time I go to take off my sprocket, I'll be taking these out fully, taking the sprocket out, and then doing what I need to do with it. Oh, look at this. See that bug? That's a big bug. Anyway, so we're doing that today. Let me show you my tools real quick. So here's what I need. Hopefully this job does not take very long. The last few jobs that I've worked on have taken like twice as long as I thought they would. So I'm hoping to get done with this by like 6 p.m. It's almost 4 right now. Shouldn't be too involved. It's just taking the wheel off, taking the sprocket off, putting it back on, putting it back on. I'm also going to be taking the rear brake caliper off, just to make it a little bit easier, but let me walk you through what I'll be doing. So on the Gen-1, this side of the axle needs a 19mm socket. The other side, this crown nut here, that gets a 24mm socket. On this side, I'm going to be using a breaker bar. I'm going to be pushing a breaker bar against the ground in order to keep the axle from spinning while I wrench on this crown nut here. I'm going to be using an extendable ratchet for that. Got a pair of needle nose pliers so that I can mess with this cotter pin holding the crown nut on. I may need to mess with these chain tensioners. So I've got a set of wrenches there. I think this one is a 12 and this one's a 14, something like that. And you can see, yeah, that's getting stripped. I may need a new set of wrenches. The one that I have may not be very good. But I've also got a hammer to hammer on the axle so that I can push it through to make it easier to get out. I've got some new cotter pins. I may put a new cotter pin on the other side of there, but that one's pretty new, so I may not need it. Got a parts tray. I forgot to mention, I've already jacked up my bike, and I took this skid plate off. I had 3 10mm bolts, so I've got a ratchet with the 10mm here too. And I've got a H6 socket. That's for the rear brake caliper, and I've got some Loctite, and that will be going on these new studs. And then finally, I've got a 20 to 100 pound torque wrench so I can torque down on this crown nut after I'm done. And I think that's about it, so let's get into it. Alright, so I'm making good time so far. So far I've taken off my caliper. Those took H6 socket bolts. I don't know how much I'm going to torque those down. I'll have to look that up when I put it back on, but I've got my ratchet set up with my 24 mil socket and then my breaker bar with the 19 mil set on the ground here. And I also did loosen my chain, loosen the chain tensioner. About to take the axle out and then I'll be taking the wheel off. Okay, we're making great time. Got the wheel off. These are gonna take a 12 mil socket. Gonna pop all these nuts off, get the sprocket off, and I think I'm gonna do the, I don't exactly know how I'm gonna get the studs off, but I'll bring you along for it. All right, we got the sprocket off. Left with the hub. Just a note, I removed the sprocket using a star pattern, so you loosen this one, this one, this one, this one, and then you go that one, that one, that one, that one, just to make sure that the sprocket doesn't warp, isn't loose more on one side and starts bending. But here we go. So I think for all these regular studs, I'm going to use the double nut method. So you come twice and then you put these, you put one nut on and then put another nut on top of it and lock them down so that you can twist the bottom one and twist the nut out. But for this one, I'm not totally sure. I've got the vise. Where'd I put it? I've got a vise. It's not the best vise, but it may be able to do the trick. If it doesn't, that's gonna be a little tough. I do not have any heat gun or anything, so I can't really heat it up, but we'll figure it out. I'll let you know what I end up doing. Just wanted to give you guys a quick demonstration of the double nut method for taking studs out. I've got two 12 mil wrenches, and you sort of turn them both together like this way. Obviously I don't have both my hands, but you tighten them down as much as you can, you lock them together, and then I'll be taking this one, and I think I'll be going this way with it, so down to the left, and then I'll gradually be trying to get it out, and then I'll do that with all the rest. Alright, so that was much easier than I thought it would be. This thing's coming out very nicely. And this isn't just the nuts spinning, the stud is spinning inside them as well. That bodes well for this broken one here. I may actually be able to get it with the vise, but we'll see. Alright, I'm a certified genius. I was trying to get this last stud out here with my vise, but it's a cheap vise. It's Pittsburgh, you know, Harbor Freight, cheap stuff. It was just getting dug up. So I was looking around and I ended up finding a socket that was slightly smaller than this, and I've just been hammering on it, sort of putting a little hex shape into the stud, and I've been able to turn it a little bit now and then. Been able to turn it a little bit before it starts stripping, and then I gotta hammer on it a little more, but I'm gonna hammer this thing down pretty far, and then hopefully I'll be able to get it all the way out, but I have backed it out a little bit, so that's the solution I've found for that. And that is how you do that. See that? Little hex shape. Now that is the shape of this here socket. I didn't do too much damage to it, I don't think. Just so you know, that is a 1/4 inch socket. And I've got a free hub now. So let's get it mounted on with these. We'll be torquing them down to 24 foot-pounds, putting some Loctite on them, and getting our sprocket back on our hub. And there we go. They're all torqued down, all except this one, which I believe is starting to strip the threads underneath inside the hub. So I don't know how much we actually just did with this entire job, because now one of the 8 hub bolts is loose, but it's in there. It's probably somewhat tight, you know, can't loosen it with my fingers. So whatever, you know. I will put a link for these bolts in the description. You may want to consider getting slightly softer ones, because as I said, that one is stripping that. Pretty soon I'm going to be getting new rims for this bike here. This bend was here when I bought it, and I've had a number of people say that that is not a good idea to go around on for too long. But when I get a new rim, presumably I'll be getting a new hub with it, so that won't be too huge of an issue, that one right there. But yep, we'll get on the rest of them. They all torqued down to 24 very nicely. And now I'm gonna put the wheel back on, and that'll be the end of the job. And I'll be able to actually go around on this wheel and feel safe on it. So let's do it. All right, and I finished the job. These 2 caliper bolts get torqued down to 18 foot-pounds, and this axle castle nut gets torqued down to 69. I used the same cotter pin because it was a new one originally, and it wasn't too bad. Yep, there's the new bolts. I've got the one that's pretty loose, but I'm not overly worried about it. It's somewhat tight in there, and so I should be able to go on, use pretty good torque. Got my chain retensioned, tightened down the bolts down here. And that's that. Thank you for watching.